right, Western Conference time. Here we go. Central Division starting off. It's going to be Dallas number one. I don't think there's much question about that. Again, they only got better with the signings of like Duchesne, for example. My questions with Dallas are really just around how that locker room is going to coagulate as the year progresses. Guys like Duchesne and Ryan Suter have both been documented to not be the best locker room guys. If they can sustain a decent locker room culture, it's these are Dallas Stars are one of my favorites to win the Stanley Cup this year. I don't think there's any question about that. My big question is their locker room and how that's going to work. How much of a role is Peter DeBoer going to play, the coach, in that locker room as well, kind of mediating? We'll see. And is Joe Pavelski going to start declining? I don't know. That's also a big question, but we haven't seen it, and at this point, I don't know. It may never happen. Dude's a tank. You still got a bunch of young guys who are still getting better every year, like Robertson and Wyatt Johnson and so on. Dallas, I like him as number one. Number two, I got the Colorado Avalanche. I don't think they're as good as they have been in previous years. Ryan Johansson is a second-line center. Probably fine. Still some question marks. There's some question marks kind of scattering the team. But I think they're the second best team in this division at this time. And I think they're still pretty solid. They got decent defense. Landeskog will be out again. But they still have the likes of McKinnon, and they have some guys that can put the puck in the net. My biggest concern is going to be their depth. And if they're going to have a second-line center in Johansson, A, if he can stay healthy, and B, if he can play at the role of a second-line center. Third, I have Winnipeg. The more I look at Winnipeg, the more I like them. I like their roster. I like what they did with the Dubois trade. I think they got better. Velarde is a guy capable of 40 goals alone. I don't know, man. The more I look at Winnipeg, I really, really think they are a playoff team at this point. They have a pretty solid defense. They have elite goaltending. I think their offense got a little more diverse, and diverse sometimes means better. I think they're going to be right back in it this year. They got rid of Blake Wheeler, who, again, was a locker room distraction for that team as well. So was Dubois. So this team could gel and really start going on a roll. I could see it happening. Fourth place, I got the Minnesota Wild. They're about the same team from last year. They're good, but they're not great. I think last year, the reason they were a playoff team was because the rest of the division didn't do so well. I think it's going to be a little different. I don't think the Wild are going to be a 100-point team, but I think they're going to be around that high 90s mark, and they're going to squeak into the playoffs as a wild card team. I don't think this is a team that can sustain playoff success the way it's built now because they're going through those buyouts. It's going to be a process. It's actually admirable if they make the playoffs again this year with the buyout penalties they have. That cap management by the GM Billy Guerin in Minnesota is incredible. So it's, Minnesota making the playoffs with the roster and the turnover they've had to incur is nonetheless extremely impressive in my eyes. Fifth place, I have Nashville. Nashville, I don't really know what to make of them. I don't think anyone knows what to make of them. I have to keep looking at the depth chart. It's like your top six is okay. Like I'm assuming Novak will be your first line center. O'Reilly will be your second line center. I'm going off cap friendly, and it's just a mess right now with the depth chart. So don't go by that. But just to kind of get a sense of where people may play. I think the depth scoring is pretty solid. Kind of underrated. I think there's a lot of potential in the depth scoring. The defense is all right. I don't have a lot. I think their defense is actually pretty solid. Top to bottom, biggest liability is going to be Tyson Barrie. But at the same time, he's an offensive defenseman. He's going to be playing with a defensive defenseman, likely Ryan McDonagh, who's more than capable of covering his deficiencies. You have Saros and Lankinen in net. Lankinen was pretty good last year, 916 save percentage. So I don't have too many questions. I think they'll be fine, but I don't think they're going to be great. It's just one of those teams that's kind of stuck in mediocrity. That's the Nashville Predators. Arizona Coyotes. The reason I'm wearing my Kachina jersey, it's actually a fake, which is disappointing because it says Phoenix Coyotes, but this is a Darcy Kemper jersey, It was only the Arizona Coyotes at that point. It's like it's a well done fake jersey, but it's fake, so it kind of hurts my soul a bit. But love the Kachina jersey. Coyotes, I think, are going to be sneaky good. They have a pretty solid top nine, and their forward group overall is pretty impressive. They have the likes of Logan Cooley coming in, who should put up, I don't know, roughly like 60 points in his rookie season. Big questions for Arizona and why I don't have them higher or lower is their defense. I think their offense is going to be that good this year, but their defense is going to be probably lower tier this year. Defense, goaltending kind of go hand in hand. Vejmelka's pretty good. I like Vejmelka. I think he'd be very good on a team with a better defense. The defense on the Arizona Coyotes is not going to be great, but it's one of those teams I have a little asterisk next to. If they start playing defense, if they focus on the right things in training camp, they could surprise some people, they could turn some heads, and they could be competitive this year. I don't know how competitive. I'm not really talking about playoff competitive, but I think they could make a pretty big jump this year. It really wouldn't be all that surprising. I like what they're doing. They're starting to build up to become a playoff team. And man, the future for this team, the prospects they still have, the draft picks they still have, and the forward group alone at this point is fantastic. They're going to keep building. They have a ton of cap space if they want to sign free agent defensemen in the offseason to bring them that stability. They have that option. Their forwards are a little more responsible playing the defensive position. I really like what Arizona's done and is doing. And I think they're continually progressing in the right direction. St. Louis, I almost put an asterisk next to their name too, because like, who knows? Their top six is pretty decent. They have some guys that underperformed. They have some guys that maybe overperformed. I don't think Buchnevich is going to be, a 90-point player this year. I have questions. I really think they need to kind of have a direction. Are they going to retool? Are they going to rebuild? Are they going to go for it? And I don't feel strongly about either one of those decisions. I don't think there's a wrong decision, but there has to be some decision. They've just sit back and done really nothing. They took all three of their first-round draft picks, and then they acquired Kevin Hayes. I don't really know what's going on in St. Louis. Questions also, is Schmid going to be your goaltender? Schmid? Is it Schmid? Man. Hofer. It's like, yeah, wait a minute. Isn't that New Jersey? Hofer. I love Hofer, too. Dude is awesome. I hope he becomes their starter because they really need stability in net. And I think he can really provide that. Binnington he shows flashes of greatness, and then he's literally just the biggest sieve you can buy at, the Home Depot. He can be brutal to watch, and he can be brilliant to watch. And there's not a whole lot of in between there. But it's been a lot more brutal to watch from Binnington lately. I hope Hofer steps in, and I hope he plays well. I really hope he wins that starting job. And that would be huge for this team to have stability in net. Sometimes for some teams, your goaltender tends to set the tone. Hofer could be that guy. Maybe St. Louis doesn't end up in 7th. But I want to see direction from this team, and there hasn't been any direction. Last, Chicago. They got Bedard. That's cool. They won the lottery, but other than that, did they get a little better? Sure. They got Foligno. He's not going to help too much with the offense. He'll provide with leadership and grittiness. They got Hall. Great. Again, not going to help too much with the offense. He'll be there. He'll probably play on the first line with Bedard. They're starting to trend in the right direction, which is great. But there's still a lot of questions with this team. Goaltending and defense and depth scoring and who's going to play on your first line with Bedard after season 2, right? Or when Taylor Hall's contract expires. Is it going to be your boy Athanasiou, who's just a lifelong Blackhawk? At this point, he's a Blackhawk player in my eyes for the rest of his life in my eyes. He can go play with any team in the NHL, and I'll still think of him as a Blackhawk player. So I have them solidifying last place in the Central. I don't think there's any question. They finish higher than 8th in the Central Division. But this is where they start building. You got to start building around you got your centerpiece. You won the lottery. You got to start building up in the next few years. So we'll see what they do. I don't know if they'll stay and last for too long. We'll see. But then who drops down to last? Questions. Questions are to be had. Not this year, though. Pacific, Edmonton. I think they're the team to beat at this point. I do. They're going to have Matthias Ekholm for a whole year. Stuart Skinner coming into his second year should continue to get a little better. We've seen teams really start to try different things on Stuart Skinner, start to have a book on him, start to expose his weaknesses, and he's responded incredibly well. I don't think Stuart Skinner at this point is elite, or I don't even know if I'd have him in the top 15, top 16. But he's good enough, and if the defense in front of him plays decently, it's a good team. You got Draisaitl, you got McDavid. I don't know if Nugent Hopkins ever comes close to 100 points again, but even if he's 60, 65 points, that's still a pretty good production. This team has a lot of pieces. They're good. They're there. They just need to execute in the playoffs. Second, I got Las Vegas. They lost Riley Smith, but on all other cylinders, that team was firing on all. They were just clicking. They were going hard. They were playing well. Las Vegas, I think, is fine. It's going to come down to goaltending and health. How does Logan Thompson respond when he comes back? How does he respond when teams start to know where his weak parts are? Is he going to adjust, or is he kind of going to revert back to his traditional goaltending and not pan out so well this year? Is Adin Hill going to sustain? Is he going to be a starting goaltender in the NHL? I don't know. I don't know. He got hot last year, and then when the Vegas won the Stanley Cup. But is that sustainable? I don't know. So we'll see. But I think Vegas overall, pretty solid team, top to bottom. I don't know. Anyway, 3, Seattle. Now, bold, sure. I like what they did to their fourth line. The rest of the team, for the most part, is pretty much the same. They swap in, who'd they lose? Soucy on the blue line, and they get Dumoulin, which, okay. Really like Soucy, but I don't think Dumoulin's really all that bad of a replacement. But I think they get better. This is a team that likes to roll all 4 lines, likes every line to have a little bit of grittiness, a little bit of physicality, plays responsible defense for the most part. The defense isn't too bad. My big question with them is goaltending. I'm thinking Joey Daccord takes that starting job this year. Grubauer finished the season strong last year. I don't know how sustainable that is carried over into the regular season. Joey Daccord, incredible AHL season last year. I think he's the guy. And if they get stability at goaltending, I think they're going to be even better. This team has been playing the same way since they started, since game 1 of coming into the league. They continually execute better every single game, and as a result, they're growing in the standings. They don't have any world breakers. I think Matty Beniers is going to be better. I think he's going to exceed a point per game this year. I think he's going to be top 10 in Selke voting, which is incredible. That kid is so good. But Seattle, a lot of people don't think they're going to have a 100-point season again. I could see them doing a little better, 104, 106 points this year. That really would not surprise me. 4th place, we got the Kings. I picked them to win the division last year. Again, it really starts with 2 things. It's that Dubois trade. I don't know how that's going to work out for them. It raises a lot more questions than it does answers. Do I don't even have their depth chart up. I don't know what I'm doing. It's like the one team I wanted to talk about their depth chart I don't have up. Anyway, so you have Kopitar, Byfield, Dubois, Deneau. Where's my finger? You have four centers, little blue ink. Byfield playing the wing. He's a natural center. You draft him as high as second to play center. You want him to take over a center position. You have Kopitar, one of the best two-way centermen in the league, still at about a point per game. You have Dubois, who you just gave an $8.5 million, was it 8-year extension to? Like it's a big contract in the NHL. You have Deneau, who's an incredible two-way player as well. If Deneau's your lowest paid center, well, I don't know, Deneau and Byfield. Deneau's making $5.5 million. You got to have one of those guys on the wing. What's going on? What's happening? You lose other pieces like Velarde and so on from that trade. I have questions. I think their defense is fine. I think their center depth is fine. Their top six is fine. But once you start getting down the lineup, I have questions. I think their top nine is fine. But like, what's going on? I don't really understand how this is going to work, how the chemistry is going to work. Is Dubois going to give it 100% every game, or is his taking shifts off like he has on previous teams going to rub players the wrong way and cause a little bit of friction in that locker room or on the bench? We'll see. Again, I don't think this team got better. I think they slightly got worse, but they're still good. They're still, no doubt, a playoff team. Biggest question for me, though, even more than last year, I think at this point, is what are they doing with their goaltending? Cam Talbot is your starter. He had below a 900 save percentage last year. He's 36. And your other guy is Phoenix Copley, who is consistently about a 900 save percentage type of guy. I don't know what's going on with their goaltending. That's pretty much it for goaltending depth. They could call an AHL guy up to play. I don't know. They have Berube as a third goaltender, 32. I don't know how that's going to work. If they need to rely on him, how he's going to perform. Just questions. How is this team going to operate? How are you got to address the goaltending issue, but they have no cap space, right? Well, it doesn't even show their cap space right here, but they don't have cap space to sign anyone to really take that goaltender position. They have to do it by way of trade, and they have to dump off cap space to do that. Questions. I don't think they'll be bad. I don't think they're going to be elite this year. I don't think they're going to be as good as they were last year. I think they'll be decent. Calgary, I have in 5th place. It's Calgary. I think a lot of these players are going to have bounce back years. I'm not too worried about it. Their defense is solid. Markstrom will bounce back. He'll be solid. I don't really have too much questions for them on the back end. It's the offense. What are you going to get from Huberdeau? What are you going to get from Kadri? What are you going to get from Backlund? Is he going to start regressing further? I think he had a career year last year, actually, which is odd. He's just a very consistent player. What are you going to get from these players? Is Weegar going to bounce back? Weegar kind of needs to have a bit of a bounce back, but this is a team, on paper, is very good, but did not execute really at all last year. So I think Calgary, I put a little asterisk. They could surprise some people. They could go on a run. They could be a 5th team to make the playoffs and wipe out Minnesota. Honestly, that wouldn't be the craziest thing to happen. As it stands right now, I have Minnesota beating out Calgary for a wild card spot. But again, if this team bounces back like we know they can, it could paint a very different picture. Vancouver, I don't know what's going on in Vancouver. Same direction. They got off to a hot start with Bruce Boudreau, and then in middle of not the season before last, middle of the season this past year, things fell apart yet again. Brought in a new coach during kind of an easier schedule. Got off to a hot start with him. Are they going to collapse again this year? My answer is yes. I have a lot of concerns about their defense. They bring in Soucy. That's fantastic. Demko should be better than he was for the first, 75% of last year. He started to come into form. He was injured too. But he started to come into form later on in that year. I really like Demko. I think he's great. I have a lot of questions. I have questions about their defense. They're starting to become more defensive oriented under Rick Tocchet, their new coach, which is great. But what's the cost going to be? Is it going to cost them significant goals? What's going to happen with Quinn Hughes? Because he's all offense. And don't come at me with him playing defense, because his defense, he's not there to play defense. He's an offensive defenseman. He's excellent at it. Excellent's probably an understatement. He's elite at it. Incredible young kid, great guy. But his defense game isn't quite there, and that's okay. I'd say it's better than Erik Karlsson's. I'd say it's better than a few other offensive defensemen in the league, and that's okay. But again, offensive defenseman versus defensive defenseman, the expectations of defense are very different. You can't just look at points and use that as a dictator to be like, oh, this guy's great, because that's typically not reality. Right? So what does that do for, like, say, Quinn Hughes' production if he's not left to be able to unleash in the offensive zone as often? If he needs to play more defense, how is he going to adjust to that? Questions. There are questions with this team. Personally, I would just pair him with a strong defensive defenseman like they've done. So he can go romp in the offensive zone and put up points at no one's business. But I'm not Rick Tocchet. I have them being in 6. I don't think they're going to be much worse or better. On paper, they got some strong pieces. In reality, a lot of questions around that team. I don't have them being competitive for a playoff spot, but I don't have them being in last. They're probably going to finish, I don't know, 80, 85 points this year. Probably several games out of the playoffs, but not close to last place. Probably with probably like top 12 pick range for the draft next year. It's my suggestion. Anaheim. All right. So Anaheim going into last year, I had a lot of questions. I think they got a lot worse going into last season. When you lose some of your key pieces and you're bringing in replacements like Kulikov and Klingberg to play defense, there's some severe questions to be asked. It was not a surprise to me. I picked them to be in last place last year. I got some hate for that for whatever reason. I think they've improved quite a bit, and I think they're going to surprise some people. They're still in the rebuild. They still have a long way to go. They still need to work on quite a few aspects of their roster. But they're trending in the right direction. They have four centers or three? Four. Yeah, 4 centers. Zegras, Strome, okay, and I love Strome. I'm so high on Strome. I love Ryan Strome. I wanted the Bruins to get him a few years ago. I made a video about it. They have Mason McTavish and Leo Carlsson. That's 4 strong centers right there. McTavish will take the next step. Zegras, polarizing, but a very good offensive player, and there's more there. There's more that could be there. Strome, strong center. Middle 6 center. In Carlsson, the second pick in the draft, played against men in the SHL, I think is going to get have a pretty strong start to the year, or pretty strong rookie season. That wouldn't surprise me. My questions with them are wings, scoring wings. You got Terry, you have Adam Henrique, who's starting to wind down his production into his mid-30s now. You have Vetrano. I don't know. I don't really fully understand that signing to play him in the top 6 and then not trade him. Killorn, it's a little much, but it is what it is. Provide some leadership, some guidance. But other than that, where's your offense coming from besides your centers? There's not a whole lot there. I don't know if I mentioned Troy Terry, but Troy Terry is elite. In case I forgot to say his name, I said it in my head. The defense, question marks, but I think is a lot better than it was last year. Leaps and bounds better. Cam Fowler, love Cam Fowler. Had kind of a rough season last year. Hopefully he bounces back a little bit, but again, he's more there for his defensive abilities. Offensive guy, yes. Power play guy, yes. But needs to be strong in his own defensive zone. Especially if he's going to play next to a guy like Jamie Drysdale. Drysdale needs to really have a bounce back. He was injured all last year. But the potential is there for Drysdale to be, I don't even know if I want to say elite, because we haven't seen elite play from Drysdale just yet. Maybe a flash here and there, but a very good defensive player. Haig and Gudis, love Rocco Gudis. Love him. I love his defensive play. He's physical, gritty. Haig is fine. Valkonainen, I think there's a lot of defensive potential there. And Lyubushkin to round out their top 6. I don't think it's all that bad. It's significantly better than it was last season to start the year. You have Gibson, Stalock in net. I think that's fine. My big questions for them are young defensemen getting exposure. They have young defensemen, right? Yeah, they have some young guys that are might see some playing time this year. Still on the depth chart in the AHL, but training camp hasn't started yet, so we could see those guys come up. But Stalock had a strong year for a brutal. He was playing behind a brutal team. He played pretty well. John Gibson could bounce back this year. If not, maybe you trade his contract. I don't know how that's going to work. I'm not getting into that right now. team's trending in the right direction. They're going to be better, but they're not going to be a playoff team, and I don't think they're better than Vancouver just yet. But I think they will be at some point. Might take a couple more years, but they will get there, and they'll be pretty solid. And they have a ton of center depth, so that's good. San Jose, I think they're going to be in last place. They've embraced the rebuild, which is great. I think they've made some sneaky good moves. They've taken on some bad contracts. Who they get? They got Mike Hoffman, Anthony Duclair was a cap dump, Mikael Granlund, not Michael Granlund, Mikael Granlund. They got Zadina, right? So they got these guys very short term. A lot of these guys, how long is Zadina? They're all 1-year contracts left, right? I don't want to just, they're all. This is the last year of their contract, so cap dump, great. But all these guys have potential to have bounce back seasons and play pretty well and be sold off at the trade deadline. And if they do, this team could be a little better than they were last year. They might not be the worst team around. My big questions for them is their defense. Their offense is fine. I don't have an issue with their offense. It's really not that bad, especially if Granlund is your third-line center. I think you'll be all right. Just saying. Their defense, I don't know. Their goaltending, I don't know. I love Kaapo Kähkönen. Mackenzie Blackwood, both those guys are high potential goalies, but both of those guys need to play behind a pretty strong defense in order to succeed. And I think both those guys are more than capable of, but the defense isn't. They're probably not going to pan out that way. It's not the best defense in the league. It's really not a very good defense. So that's it. Again, as I said last video, if you want me to go over any of these teams, if you want me to talk about any in more detail, no problem. I'll make a video on that. It's not a big deal. Again, this is pretty long, so summing it up. But 4 teams make the playoffs. Got some wild cards that could change up in there. I go through every roster, every team, every depth chart, prospects, who could be called up, what the season might look like, past seasons, past rosters. Trade deadlines is a big thing I factor in that. A lot of people don't. They'll just look at the offseason and based on that make the assessments. But some of these teams, like the Edmonton Oilers, they got a top pairing defenseman at the trade deadline last year, Matthias Ekholm, and he's an anchor on that blue line. To have him for a whole season is going to be significant. New York Islanders with Bo Horvat, the Detroit Red Wings losing Hronek and Tyler Bertuzzi. Things like that are really important to look at as well. So the trade deadline is not too far away from the end of the season. So there's that. But yeah, appreciate it. Let me know what you think. Comments. Am I crazy? All right, that's it. Thanks for watching. Take care.